Good afternoon. Elizabeth II, by the grace of God, of the United Kingdom, Canada, and her other realms and territories. Queen, Head of the Commonwealth, Defender of the Faith, proclamation. To our faithful, the members elected to serve in the Legislative Assembly of our province of Alberta, and to each and every one of you, greeting. Whereas it is deemed expedient for certain causes and considerations to convene the Legislative Assembly of our province of Alberta for the first session of the 30th Legislature, we do will that you and each of you and all others in this behalf interested, on Tuesday, the 21st day of May, 2019, at the hour of 1:30 in the afternoon, at our city of Edmonton, personally be and appear for the dispatch of business, to treat, act, do, and conclude upon those things which, in the legislature of our province of Alberta, by the common council of our said province, may, by the favour of God, be ordained. In testimony whereof, we have caused these, our letters, to be made patent, and the great seal of our province of Alberta to be hereunto affixed. Witness, the Honourable Lois Mitchell, Lieutenant Governor of our province of Alberta, this 30th day of April, in the year of our Lord, 2019, and in the 68th year of our reign. By command, please be seated.
Order! All right, please. Your Honor, the Honourable Lieutenant Governor.
Please be seated.
Honourable members, I am commanded by Her Honour, the Honourable Lieutenant Governor, to inform you that she does not see fit to declare the causes of her summoning of the present legislature of this province until the Speaker of the Assembly shall have been chosen according to law. She is therefore pleased to retire from the Assembly to return at a subsequent hour on the next sitting day to declare the causes of her calling of this legislature.
All right, please.
Honourable members, Honourable members, pursuant to the Lieutenant Governor's direction and Section 16(1) of the Legislative Assembly Act, nominations are invited for the office of Speaker of this Assembly for the 30th Legislature. Pursuant to Standing Order 11(1), the Speaker shall be elected according to the procedure set out in Schedule A of the Standing Orders. I therefore call for nominations.
Thank you.
I rise today to nominate the member from Old Didsbury Three Hills for the position of Speaker of this Legislative Assembly of Alberta. I've had the absolute privilege of working with Mr. Cooper as his Deputy House Leader for 2 years in opposition. I very quickly learned that he is indeed an absolutely parliamentary and political nerd, and that there is no one more suitable for the title of Mr. Speaker than the member from Old Didsbury Three Hills. I was impressed with his knowledge and respect of the parliamentary traditions based on the respected Westminster parliamentary system. I was impressed with his respect for our democratic institutions and the decorum required to maintain respectful, productive debate. His knowledge of protocol, which will be necessary as he represents this House to visiting dignitaries and while he's representing us in other jurisdictions. The member from Old Didsbury Three Hills is someone I am proud to call a friend and someone we can all be proud to call of as our Speaker. Thank you.
Mr. Cooper, do you wish to accept the nomination?
I do.
Are there further nominations?
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. Belated congratulations on your new role, and thank you, honourable members. It's an honour to once again speak in this chamber as the elected representative from Edmonton Millwoods, and I'd like to congratulate and welcome everyone. I see we have a lot of first-time representatives with us today, and I can still remember the strange mix of excitement and pressure that each of you are likely feeling at this moment. The learning curve for new members is a steep one, and that's why I would encourage all of us to set aside partisanship at this moment and instead trust the incredible value that comes from experience as we make this very important choice for Speaker. There is no substitute for experience in a role. Knowing how things ought to work and how they do work allows an individual to excel in a particular role. And that is why it is my honor to nominate the only member in this chamber who already has the experience of presiding over this assembly as its chair to be our next Speaker. I am proud to nominate Heather Sweet, the member for Edmonton Manning, who has served ably in the 29th legislature as the Deputy Chair of Committees, to now take on the role as our Speaker. Now, I know Heather would bring to the role of Speaker a wealth of experience and a true desire to serve this assembly impartially and with the considerable grace and wisdom that she has to offer. Ms. Sweet has already shown that she can lead this chamber through the fiercest of debates while keeping members of all parties in order and protecting the privileges that make our work as members of the Assembly possible. We should also consider representation of the people of this great province with the goal to having the Speaker's office contain members that represent North, South, and certainly representation from our capital city. I hope Heather will accept this nomination, and I hope you will join with me in valuing experience as we choose who will preside as our Speaker. Your ability to fulfill your duties as a member of this place depends on us making a wise choice for this role. And I know that Heather Sweet would allow each of us to represent our constituents to our fullest. Thank you.
Ms. Sweet, do you accept the nomination?
I do. Thank you.
Are there further nominations? I declare the nominations closed. The nominees for the position of Speaker are Mr. Nathan Cooper and Ms. Heather Sweet. Voting will commence after the list of nominees is posted at each voting booth. Thank you. Members will vote by printing the first and last name of their preferred candidate on the ballot paper, then placing their completed ballot in the ballot box on the Sergeant-at-Arms desk. Thank you. voted who wish to? Number of ballots cast for the election of Speaker, 87. Number of spoiled ballots, 1. Number of votes required to achieve the 50% plus 1 majority, 44. The member having received the majority of votes cast is Mr. Nathan Cooper. Mr. Cooper is hereby declared the Speaker of the Legislative Assembly of Alberta for the 30th Legislature.
Before I begin, let me just take a moment to honor, I see former Speaker Ken Kowalski in the Speaker's Gallery this afternoon. It's a pleasure to have you here. So nice of you to join us on this fantastic day. Thank you for joining us. As this is my first opportunity to do so, I wish to send my greatest and deepest thank yous to the outstanding constituents of Old Stitsbury Three Hills for placing their trust back in me. I also wish to congratulate all members of the Assembly, whether it was your first election or your re-election. Congratulations on being here today, and thank you. Thank you so very much from the very bottom of my heart for placing your trust in me to serve as Speaker of the 30th Legislative Assembly. Whether it's your first time as an MLA or you faithfully served this institution, like the Leader of the Official Opposition, for 4,097 days, or in the case of the member from Calgary Hayes or Cypress Medicine Hat, for 2,585 days. I'm sure that all of them will tell you that coming to the chamber for the very first time after an election is a very, very, very special time. This is a special place where the weight of history meets our own unbridled hopes as we race towards the future. My hope that is in your debates that we will be vigorous, thoughtful, and amicable. To date, in this chamber, only 954 people have ever been elected to serve and represent Albertans. As we honor their legacy and service, let us be mindful that we now set the standard for those who come after us. May we not take this duty or calling lightly. Together, we have an incredible opportunity and responsibility. And with that in mind, may I indulge you just for a brief moment to recognize a special guest in the Assembly today for the very first time. Louise Cooper. She is a remarkable woman in every single way, and she also happens to be my grandmother. I can tell you all that I would not be here today if it was not for her. Her courage and bravery, in lockstep with her loving generosity, have played such a pivotal role in my life. I've learned many, many lessons from her words and her examples. Not the least of this, in our haste to do good, we must never forget to be good for our families, our communities, and for our province. It is her example that I will endeavor to live up to in this new role. It is with a servant's heart that I seek to serve this Assembly, to ensure the rules and conventions and standing orders are applied equally, and that all members of the Assembly have access to the resources you need to effectively represent your constituents. I will seek to uphold the high standard of those who've come before us. I intend to serve you to the best of my ability. You set the tone and orders of the Assembly, and I am a servant for you. For it is in my view that the primary role of the Speaker is to first serve the House. It is the Speaker's responsibility to ensure that all members can exercise their rights and privileges in the Assembly. The Speaker's authority comes from you, its members, and that allows this Parliament to function properly and fairly and in the manner expected by the people of Alberta who have sent us here today. As Speaker Betty Boothroyd once famously said, "You've got to ensure that the holders of an opinion, however unpopular, are allowed to get their points across." It is with this in mind that I commit to you that as long as I have the privilege of serving as Speaker, your privileges and duties as elected members of this Assembly will be recognized and defended. I encourage and entrust all of you to remember that in our haste to do good for each other, we must never forget to be good for each other. I have reviewed the calendar and there are many busy days ahead, so let us proceed. I'd invite you all to rise for the prayer. Let us pray. Father, on this day of new beginnings, we ask for your guidance in the responsibility we have undertaken and your help in fulfilling our duties. As members of the Legislative Assembly, may we faithfully serve all Albertans and in serving them, serve you. Amen, and please be seated. Honorable members, pursuant to Section 17(1) of the Legislative Assembly Act and the Standing Orders 58(1)A, nominations are invited for the office of Deputy Speaker and Chair of Committees of this Assembly for the 30th Legislature. I therefore call for nominations. Would the member for Athabasca, Barhead, Westlock, please?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and it truly is a pleasure to rise in this House today and be the first to congratulate you on your new role as Speaker of this Assembly. I know that your extensive experience and your eagerness for the role will serve all members of this Assembly well. Now moving on to the Chair of Committees and Deputy Speaker. The role of the Chair of Committees and Deputy Speaker is not just a figurehead position, but rather a role that serves a vital function in this Assembly in keeping order, preserving tradition, and holding decorum. As with the Speaker of this House, the deputy position serves an essential purpose and is not to be taken lightly. I believe the person who would be best suited to this role is one that is familiar with House proceedings, a member in good standing, and who I've witnessed firsthand to be fair to all. It is also important that they have a presence that can command a House. With that said, it is my honor to nominate the member for Airdrie East, Angela Pitt. Following her role as Deputy Whip to our Legacy Caucus, Mrs. Pitt has served as our Deputy House Leader in the United Conservative Caucus for almost 2 years. She has proven herself to be attentive to the role while being a leader to those around her. She is respected amongst all members of our caucus and has a deep admiration for our parliamentary process and the historic traditions of this House. Mr. Speaker, I must reflect on my first opportunities in getting to know the member from Airdrie East. When we were first elected in this legislature in 2015, Mrs. Pitt was my seatmate just off to my right. One of the things I got to know about Angela was her passion and commitment to the proceedings of this House. In fact, she was the first person I had ever met who took the time to actually watch question period regularly in her home. Now, to a farmer from Westlock, that seemed rather absurd. Imagine spending an hour of what could be a productive afternoon watching politicians banter back and forth. But what it did tell me, though, Mr. Speaker, was Mrs. Pitt's passion and commitment to the proceedings in this House. Mrs. Pitt is extremely committed to public service and has always sought the best for not only her constituents, but for all Albertans. It is my sincere belief that if elected, Mrs. Pitt would bring her hard-working nature to this role and serve all members of the House with dedication and fairness as we collectively strive to serve Albertans. It is my hope that all members of this House will support and vote for Mrs. Pitt. I'm truly confident that given her experience and dedication, she would fulfill the role of Chair of Committees and Deputy Speaker with dignity, with confidence, and respect for all members of this Assembly. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Ms. Pitt, do you wish to accept the nomination?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It would be an honor to serve alongside you. For all members of this Assembly, I graciously and humbly accept the nomination.
Are there any other nominations? The member for Edmonton Mill Woods.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and let me begin by congratulating you on your election as Speaker and setting a tone of service to this Assembly. I'd like to acknowledge and thank former Speaker Bob Weiner, who is in your gallery today, Mr. Speaker. The guidance and service you provided to the 29th Legislature will never be forgotten. Your actions changed this place for the better, and we thank you. Mr. Speaker, the tradition of a nonpartisan chair and a nonpartisan office of the Speaker is of critical importance for the functioning of this legislature. It helps to achieve improved civility and decorum, objectives I understand the new government caucus holds dear. To achieve those ends, Canada's federal House of Commons has frequently used the practice of choosing a deputy speaker from the opposition caucus. Not only does this contribute to the good functioning of the House, but also ensures nonpartisan functioning of the Speaker's office. When our new Premier served in the federal government's Executive Council, he and his colleagues did so with multi-party representation in Parliament's Speaker's office. And so I invite us to adopt that same tradition here in our legislature. It's my honor to nominate Heather Sweet for Deputy Speaker and Chair of Committees of this House. As I said in my earlier nomination, Heather Sweet would be a very capable Deputy Speaker of this Assembly, bringing a wealth of experience along with her demonstrated ability to work with all members. We have an important opportunity right now to set the tone for this 30th legislature and to significantly improve decorum and civility in this House. And so I ask all members to join me because together we can build a sweet house.
There's very few days in which you're allowed to use names in this chamber, and so I appreciate what you've done there. Ms. Sweet, do you choose to accept the nomination?
I do, Mr. Speaker.
Are there any other nominations for the position of Deputy Speaker and the Chair of Committees? Seeing none, I declare the nominations closed. The nominees for the position of Deputy Speaker and Chair of Committees are Angela Pitt and Heather Sweet. Voting will commence after the list of nominees is posted at each voting booth. Honourable members, we'll use the same voting process for the Deputy Speaker and the Chair of Committees. Please file through the table officers to receive your ballot. The voting will now begin. Have all voted that wish to do so? Sergeant.
Number of ballots cast for the position of Deputy Speaker and Chair of Committees, 85. Number of spoiled ballots, none. Number of votes required to achieve the 50% plus one majority, 43. The member having received the majority of the votes cast is Mrs. Angela Pitt. Mrs. Angela Pitt is hereby declared Deputy Speaker and Chair of Committees of the Legislative Assembly of Alberta for the 30th Legislature.
Congratulations. Before we proceed, I would be remiss, and I thank the member for Edmonton Mill Woods for recognizing the former Speaker of the Assembly, the immediate former Speaker, Mr. Bob Warner. I know that you served diligently and dutifully and appreciated your candor as the official opposition House Leader at times, and I wish you and former Mrs. Speaker nothing but the best and an incredible amount of hugs from those grandbabies. Honourable members, pursuant to Section 17.1 of the Legislative Assembly Act and Standing Order 58.1b, nominations are invited for the office of Deputy Chair of Committees for the 30th Legislature. I therefore call for nominations. The member for Edmonton Mill Woods.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and congratulations to our new Deputy Speaker and Chair of Committees. Mr. Speaker, in this nomination, I would like to stress again the unique opportunity that members of this House have to make significant and genuine improvements to decorum and civility by ensuring that the Speaker's office has representation from the opposition caucus. This is the moment to set a new tone. This is the time to set a bold new direction and begin an era of nonpartisan cooperation to ensure that the privileges of all members are protected. And so it's my honor to nominate Heather Sweet for Deputy Chair of Committees. We've now elected a Speaker and a Deputy Speaker, neither of whom have experience with the offices to which they are taking on. We would be remiss to leave that team with no link to the past, with no one who can offer how it was done before and to share the wisdom that comes from experience. Let us offer them Heather Sweet's guidance and tutelage. Her experience as the only member of this Assembly to have presided over our proceedings. She has represented our province at speakers' conferences on multiple occasions. She is familiar with the administrative functions of the Speaker's office. And she is also a representative of the Edmonton area, which brings an availability to participate in all the demanding activities of the Speaker's role. Finally, we have a shortage of women in leadership positions in this House and in Executive Council. By electing Heather Sweet, we will be sending an important message to all Albertans and recognizing the value of having strong, experienced, and talented women in all important roles. I encourage all members to support Heather Sweet in the role of Deputy Chair of Committees.
Ms. Sweet, do you accept the nomination?
I do.
Are there further nominations? The member for Calgary Fish Creek.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's an honor to rise before you today with deep gratitude, of course, to the people of Calgary Fish Creek for this great privilege, and to extend my sincere congratulations after your hard-earned and well-deserved ascendancy to the Speaker's chair. I would also like to congratulate Angela Pitt, the Honourable Member for Airdrie East, on her election as Deputy Speaker and Chair of Committees. We are very proud of you both and know that we shall all be well served by your shared commitment and that of your excellent staff to all members of the Legislature and indeed to all Albertans. Mr. Speaker, I am deeply honoured to have the privilege today of nominating Nicholas Milliken, the Honourable Member for Calgary-Currie, for the position of Deputy Chair of Committees. While the Honourable Member was only recently elected to his first term as an esteemed member of this Assembly, I've gotten to know him over the past year while witnessing his sense of duty in his roles, first as a nominee and more recently through the campaign period as a hard-working, dedicated and passionate Albertan, ready, willing and more than able in serving his constituents. Yet he is always willing to lend a hand to his new colleagues and emerging political family, which I am hopeful he will be given the honour of including all of us in as we consider him for this humble role. Nick's background includes volunteering and fundraising for charities in his community, many of them in fact, while he also has a professional background in finance, law and entrepreneurship, those skills that he can bring to this Assembly. Mr. Speaker, he is also a proud family man and honours and appreciates that balance in our lives also allows us to bring balance to this chamber in the forms of compassion, honesty, fairness, generosity, humility, and kindness. Mr. Speaker, my nomination of Nicholas Milliken on this auspicious day in the history of Alberta is without reservation. I encourage all members to support him in his quest to serve this great Assembly. Thank you.
Mr. Milliken, do you accept the nomination?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Needless to say, simply being part of this process is a humbling experience, and it is my honor to accept this nomination from the Honourable Member of Calgary-Fish Creek.
Are there any further nominations? I declare the nominations closed. The nominees for the position of Deputy Chair of Committees are Heather Sweet and Nicholas Milliken. Voting will commence after the list of nominees is posted in each voting booth. The voting will begin now. Has everybody voted that wanted to? Sergeant. My first day.
Number of ballots cast for the position of Deputy Chair of Committees, 84. Number of spoiled ballots, none. Number of votes required to achieve the 50% plus one majority, 43. The member having received the majority of the votes cast is Mr. Nicholas Milliken. Mr. Nicholas Milliken is hereby the Deputy Chair of Committees of the Legislative Assembly of Alberta for the 30th Legislature.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk, and congratulations to Mr. Milliken. Members, the House stands adjourned until Wednesday, May 22nd at 3 p.m.
Order!